Who else is feeling about that Spidey life today? What, you don't know about that Spidey life? Then you really need to go look it up. And for those of you who do know about that Spidey life, 10 points of awesome for you. And 10 points of geek. The biggest thing on everybody's mind today is Spider-Man Homecoming. Does it live up to the hype? Does it follow the same Marvel formula that's been plaguing the Marvel movies that many people have been saying has been making the movies predictable? Or is there some type of crazy conspiracy theory that's making a movie marketed so that it seems very awesome when it actually isn't? Well, of course, today this is a rant video, so we got our spoilers, and we're here to tell you what our honest, subjective opinion is about Spider-Man Homecoming. The answers to those questions I mentioned earlier are yes and no. The movie lives up to the hype, but at the same time, no, it doesn't follow the same Marvel formulas that have been plaguing a lot of the movies. So I would say Spider-Man Homecoming is a great movie, and you should definitely see it, especially if you're a fan of the Marvel movies. Great, right? However, hold on. Yeah, I gotta get this out. You gotta let me finish. However, there were some issues I did find with the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. And of course I'm going to explain them in my rant review here. Naturally, we're going to start with the positives of the movie, and with the positives, we're going to start by talking about the actors and their performances in Spider-Man Homecoming. And of course, by us doing that, we're going to start, of course, with Spider-Man. You guessed it, congratulations, Spider-Man. And Tom Holland was the actor that played Spider-Man in this movie, and I think that Tom Holland so far is the best Spider-Man that we've had in the franchise, and I'm going to explain to you why. We'll start by getting structuralist, because everybody loves comparing something to something else to show how it's better, right? The first Spider-Man that we'll start with is, of course, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. He was the premier Spider-Man. He was, of course, the actor that had to make Spider-Man believable for everybody else, and he also had to do it well. So I understand the man had a lot of weight on his shoulders. But for me, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, he brought the drama to Spider-Man well, but he didn't have enough comedy with this Spider-Man. Where growing up with the 90s cartoon, I didn't read many of the Spider-Man comics, but growing up, like, none of them. But growing up, I read some of them later, but not back then. And with the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man, he could get serious where he had drama going on in his life, but at the same time, though, he was the geeky photographer when he was Peter Parker. But then when he became Spider-Man, he was kind of arrogant. He talked a little trash and everything. He made fun of his opponents, not in a negative way, but he had a lighthearted approach to combat in the battle. In Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, you just didn't see that represented that much. He was more the drama and the angst part of Spider-Man, but not much of the comedy. And then we had Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And his Spider-Man, to me, he did pretty well as Spider-Man. He was just a victim of bad movies. And it was pretty much sucked that he didn't get cast to be the Spider-Man in the Marvel universe. I know he really wanted that, but there were some issues with the Spider-Man there, which I'm about to get to. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, he was the Spider-Man that brought the balance between the geeky and the jokester the geeky Peter Parker and the jokester, like, confident superhero that we have with Spider-Man. He brought that duality to Spider-Man almost perfectly. But the biggest thing that irked me about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I know this is going to be debatable, is that he was a bit too geeky, to the point where it seemed like he was extremely awkward and very socially inept. Where, I mean, just when I think of Spider-Man, I imagine him being a geek, but I just don't imagine him being so, like, socially inept where he can barely string together a sentence when it comes to certain situations. And that was the biggest issue I have with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. He brought first brought the duality to the Spider-Man character, and he did it very well. I loved him when he was Spider-Man, when he was in the suit, and when he was fighting villains in the Amazing Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man 2. However, when he was Peter Parker, he just overdid the geeky for me. Enter Tom Holland's Spider-Man, where after the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was start off great and eventually fizzle, and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, who was just the victim of bad movies, we have the Tom Holland Spider-Man, where he finally brings, number one, I remember hearing that he is actually closer to Peter Parker's age when he started becoming Spider-Man. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield were a bit older, but this Spider-Man is the first one closer to his age. And Tom Holland's Spider-Man brings the perfect balance to me between the geeky Peter Parker that isn't too geeky, that's that just right geeky, and I think they did it well too by having him have a friend or a sidekick. That's something that was missing. That you'll note this though. This was a missing ingredient from Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man movies, where Spider-Man didn't have a sidekick or anyone to play off of really other than his love interest. But he didn't have someone else that knew his secret that he could really play off of, no one that he didn't have any relationship angst with. And that I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who played his buddy, he really helped really flesh out Peter Parker's character in this movie. So I like to thank him for doing that. I'll thank him more appropriately later in this video, because that guy was also hilarious too. He was freaking funny, and I didn't know him from anything else, so I saw this movie, and I hope that actor continues to go forward in his comedic career, because he really helped ground this Spider-Man movie. I really appreciated that. But Tom Holland's Spider-Man brings the first perfect balance to me between the geeky Peter Parker and the arrogant, not taking things so seriously Spider-Man. And I really appreciated that. And also with a Peyton Millennia, like when you see him, like when you actually see behind the scenes at the beginning of the movie, when he's actually recording and recording everything that happens and whatnot, and like selfieing and stuff with the events that happen. It was so millennial-like, and I really like that they made him not only act appropriate for how a kid his age would act, but they also made him act how a kid would act in this generation, and I really appreciated that. So Tom Holland, you did a great job of being Spider-Man, and to me, you finally bridged the gap perfectly between the geek and the superhero, between Spider-Man's duality. We have all different types of dualities in superhero movies. We have the Batman duality, his dilemma. We have the Superman duality, his dilemma. And then we have the Spider-Man duality. And this character, to me, finally captured that perfectly. Congratulations. Oh man, and when it comes to the other actors and actresses' performance in this movie, where do I begin? I mean, I really can't begin anywhere, because there were so many spectacular roles in the movie other than the Spider-Man character. Like, no actor or actress I saw in this movie dampened the overall experience I had of the movie. There's no one that I can point out and say, you did absolutely terrible with your performance in this movie. There just isn't. I mean, and we had Childish Gambino in this movie. I don't know whether you recognize him, but he was in this freaking movie. We had a Disney actress who I didn't know about till I saw this movie, who's an up and rising star in the ranks with the younger generation. Don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Is Zendaya or Zendaya? But she did an amazing job as MJ. And then we had Robert Downey Jr. Of course, he did his thing. And so there were a lot of great performances. It would take me forever in this video if I was to take each and every actor and to point out how fantastic of a job they did. So overall, claps with the overall performances of everyone in the movie. But there are still 3 people, though, that even though I don't think they performed spectacularly above the rest, they deserve a special mention from my eyes. From my perspective, they kind of stood out to me. First up is Jacob Batalon. I know I'm not pronouncing his last name right, so I'm just gonna call him Jacob. I don't know, I don't remember the name of his character, but he was Peter Parker's best friend, and I think a lot of people are going to underestimate the role, or they're going to downplay the role that he played in the movie as Peter Parker's bestie. And that was an element missing in the other movies that really helped flesh out Spider-Man's character, where he didn't have a bestie in the previous movies. And this movie, he did have a best bud, and the guy did an excellent job. He was comedic, and he acted like any typical geek would, any normal geek would, upon learning that their best friend is Spider-Man, or their best friend is a superhero, period. I'll bet he also had some hacking skills and everything, which did make him a little above average, and he did show that he had, like, possibly maybe he had the inclination to have genius intellect, but still, he was still pretty normal. And I really want to congratulate him for what he did in this movie. He was funny, and he helped keep Peter Parker's character grounded. And that actor, I hope you continue to do well, and you continue to strive forward in your comedic career, because you did an excellent job in this movie. Congratulations. And now for the other two, we have Bokeman Woodbine. And I know I seen him in some movies before, but I can't remember what I seen him in. And I don't know if you know, well, you know this is a spoiler. The role he played in this movie was the Shocker. There was another guy he was the Shocker, mind you, but right now, he was a premature version of Shocker. And if they eventually make a Sinister Six movie with these Spider-Man villains, or maybe they just flush him out in another Spider-Man movie, hopefully he'll come with a full suit. But in this movie, all he had was the single glove, and he caused some damage and a little bit of hell for Spider-Man and his comrades with that single glove, working underneath Michael Keaton's character, which is, of course, the Vulture, the big villain of this movie. And I like to say that he did a good job of bringing the blue collar, second in command villain to the movie. He did a good job bringing that role. He was menacing. He didn't have to say much. He was pretty much in the background. I would even consider him to have the quiet man menacing effect. And he still did a good job with that. And I love for them to, if he does play the Shocker in more movies, I'd love for him to flesh out his character more, give him more backstory, and we learn more about him, and maybe he becomes a little bit more of a threat for Peter Parker. I know that I know he's a big member of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, but I don't remember him ever posing that big of a threat. He's basically like a kind of a standard thief. He isn't a Dr. Octopus. He isn't a Mysterio, or he isn't a Venom or anything like that. But he's still like a villain that anyone in the Spider-Man lore would know about. And if they could have him in future movies, I want them to flush him out a little bit more. So, yeah, and I will say this, though, I have to admit, I did miss the Australian accent from the 90s cartoon. I thought that really did distinguish the Shocker, and I thought the Shocker appeared in the movie just like they had old Captain Boomerang in the, in Suicide Squad, even though I had my problems with his role, not because of the way he acted, but because how useful he was. So the Shocker would have been an Australian, more threatening, like Captain Boomerang, if he was like he was in 90s cartoon. But them making it how he was, still, they made this character different, but it was good different, and I really appreciated that. So keep it up, Bokeman Woodbine, and I hope that you'll be the future Shocker in the Spider-Man movies, and hopefully they won't do what they did to the original Shocker in the movie, because that kind of sucked. Last actor up is Michael Keaton, and we all know Michael Keaton is a big actor. and he played the role of the Vulture in the movie. He was basically the man who was committing crimes, and he basically got the shaft. He got the shaft by Tony Stark for a construction project he was working on, and he needed the money that he got shafted on to pay the mortgage for the house and support his family. So he decided to take the equipment for himself and decide to start his own black markets business, selling redone alien tech to criminals. And I don't know if you know, but there was another supervillain in the movie too who was really under the radar. And this is other than we all know the Scorpion kind of appears near the end in jail when Michael Keaton, of course, finally gets beat by Spider-Man, as we all know would inevitably happen. But the Tinker I researched was the guy who was doing all the engineering for the alien tech that they got, and he's another, well, I don't know big, but he's another villain in Spider-Man lore also. And he was a geeky guy who didn't say much, who was constantly trying to tell Michael Keaton, do you want to do the high altitude thing? Do you want to do the high altitude thing? And Michael Keaton was like, no, we don't need to do that. And then finally when shit hit the fan and things got really, like, when Spider-Man really messed up their operation, he was finally, yeah, you can do the high altitude thing. He was like, really? Wow, you won't regret this, sir. So yeah, that guy was the Tinkerer. So yeah, we had a lot of villains in the Spider-Man movie, a lot that, and you wouldn't expect that, but we did. Well, any case, getting back on topic, Michael Keaton played the Vulture, and he did a great job of being the family man who's doing what he has to do to support his family. Kind of remind me of Sandman, what he did in Spider-Man 3 with doing what he could to support his daughter. But I do think that Michael Keaton's character, I think he brought the acting well. And I have to noticing also, when he had Peter Parker in the car, after Peter Parker was taking his daughter to the prom, and I have to admit, that was also a great twist in the movie also, when it turns out, and you did not see that coming. You can't tell me you saw that coming. No one saw that coming. Anyone who did, I'm calling you out right now. You did not see this coming. Where it turned out that the chick that Peter Parker was crushing on, that he took to the homecoming, that she turned out to be the Vulture's daughter. And when the Vulture finally figured out who Spider-Man was, he told his daughter to get out of the car so he can have the dad talk with him. And he put the gun up on, like, behind the seat, and he told Spider-Man that amazing, chilling speech, which to me, it had heart, but it also was frightening at the same time. And I could understand how it chilled Peter Parker, Tom Holland's character, when he told him that if you interfere in my business and you mess up what I'm trying to do with my family, I will do what I can to help them, and I will kill you and everyone you love and care about. I thought that was very powerful, very well done scene. And for that scene being well done and so powerful, they didn't deliver on it. But I'll get to that later, why I think that Michael Keaton's character was underutilized in this movie with what I disliked about the movie. But what he did as a role in a Vulture, what his actor brought to that role, and how it really strengthened the character, it brought out a Spider-Man villain I really didn't care for, and really made me like care for his character, made me fear his character a little bit. So congrats on that. Congrats, Michael Keaton. Okay, other than the characters, other things I liked about the movie were the pacing was great, where I know that's always been an issue with me with Marvel movies, is I don't like the pacing, where I think especially the way they pace the calming and the dramatic moments, I never like that, and I talk about it in my previous videos on how with a lot of Marvel movies, they have comedy zingers being thrown around, and then a dramatic situation will happen, and then they will get right back with some comedy going, and it just seems a bit unbalanced to me, where I'm like, what, does a whole movie have to be freaking comedy hour? Well, you know, a movie that actually gets that, even though a lot of people don't like some of these movies, a movie that gets the pacing right between comedy and action and drama is the Transformers movies. Even though Michael Bay, his story is lacking, his action is, he has a lot of explosions, his action is decent, but with giant robots, you can't really tell too much about what's going on, which sucks. But you have to admit, though, despite the flaws of the Transformers movies, they have a perfect balance between action and comedy. Well, between drama and comedy in the movies. And the pacing in this movie seemed to me, it reminded me of the pacing with the Transformers movies, where the movie was paced quickly, but then again it knew how to slow down, and then you had a good balance between a comedy in this movie and the drama, where it felt like there were the comedic moments throughout the movie that kept you laughing, that were the breadcrumbs that kept you going through the movie, but then you had the big dramatic drops, and the movie took a break for those dramatic drops, and for Spider-Man to go ahead and to deal with those dramatic drops in the movie, as opposed to him, even though he's still Spider-Man, but it wasn't just completely comedy hour during these moments. There might have been some things that were like, aha, that's a little bit funny, but it wasn't like the characters that were really adding that misplaced comedy element to the movie. The characters that weren't adding that misplaced comedy element to the movie. And that's something also I really appreciated, was the pacing in this movie seemed to remind me of the Transformers pacing, and it also solved the pacing problem that I really don't like with Marvel movies. So to me, this is the first Marvel movie I've seen in a long time, other than, of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy's movies. They got it right. But the other Marvel movies, especially the Avengers movies, don't get it right. The Spider-Man Homecoming did. Well, we've talked about what I liked about the movie. Now it's time to get to the fun part. What I dislike about Spider-Man Homecoming. 3 words sum up what I dislike about the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. The biggest thing I disliked about the movie, and something that also plagues most of the Marvel movies, other than their bad pacing between the comedy and the drama, which is something this movie fixed along the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And that is, and the 3 words are, Marvel Kids Gloves. Just like in the previous Avengers movies, where they didn't want to kill anybody, and they didn't want anything that bad to happen, which they finally decided to fix in Captain America Civil War, which is still, of course, the best Marvel movie. Deadpool coming in second. But yeah. So the thing about it is that it felt like they didn't want anybody to be a bad person in this movie, where they wanted you to be sympathetic, not only for the heroes and the mistakes that they did by having the characters seem to understand what they did, but also even the villains, they tried to make them seem a bit more sympathetic than you'd expect inside this movie. Issue number 1 dealt with Liz. And Liz, of course, I don't remember the actress's name, but Liz was the love interest for Peter Parker in this movie. He was basically the chick that he was trying to get with. And they had a trivia competition in the movie, and she really looked forward to this trivia event. She thought it was great. She really looked forward to it, and it was something that she really thought was important. And Peter Parker was supposed to participate in the trivia event, but he skipped out on the event in order to go and pursue the Vulture. That was Major Strike 1. Major Strike 2 was and then there was another strike before that one, when he was supposed to be bringing Spider-Man to a party, which I thought was a pretty bad move, and I was good that he didn't do that though. But he was supposed to be bringing Spider-Man to a party in order to show off to his friends, to be like, hey, I know Spider-Man, and he ended up leaving in order to pursue the Vulture with that too. That was another event where something she was looking forward to. She was looking forward to meeting Spider-Man, and he botched on that. Event number 3 was a homecoming dance. When they had the homecoming dance event, and he was supposed to, of course, be her date to that event, And he ended up leaving the dance early and said she deserved better than this. She didn't know what he was talking about. What he was talking about was actually the vulture and her father committing all those crimes in order to pay for their lifestyle. That's what he meant, that she deserved better than that. But she didn't know what he was talking about. Maybe he meant that he thought he was a loser and he didn't deserve her, and he just abandoned her during the homecoming. She didn't know, and he abandoned her during that event. And despite all that happening, him abandoning her three times he made a promise to this girl, and three times he didn't follow through on that promise. At the end of the movie, she still lets him off so easy, where she's just like, well, I hope that you get your stuff together, and my dad's in jail now we're gonna have to move. But I'm surprised she wasn't raging at Peter Parker, even though she didn't know what was going on. But I'm surprised she wasn't raging at him for him basically being a jerk to her three times. He made promises three times to this girl, and three times he abandoned them, and this girl just looked on the sunny side of things. I personally thought that was a little unrealistic, and it added to the Marvel Kids Gloves trope problem, where they constantly they want characters to do messed up stuff in order to build drama, but then you don't have any serious consequences for those actions that they do. Something I wish they stopped doing, and the relationship between Peter Parker and Liz in the movie continue that sequence of events, unfortunately. Issue number 2, concerning the Marvel Kids Glove syndrome, of course, deals with Michael Keaton's character and what I was talking about earlier with him being the Vulture, and how with the Vulture, Spider-Man basically threatened his lifestyle, where this man had chosen this lifestyle not because because he was crazy, not because he was an evil genius that just wanted to stick it to the man. He did this because he believed it was the only way he could support his family. The man was doing this because he thought it was the only way he could survive. And Spider-Man threatened that livelihood of his. By Spider-Man ruining their business and stopping them whenever he could, the man was in danger of losing his lifestyle, was in danger of losing his house, was in danger of losing his family, was in danger of losing everything. And because of that, he had given Peter Parker that speech, which I herald as being one of the most grim villain speeches I've heard in a movie. Not only because it's one of those badass speeches where the guy's telling you mess with me, I'm going to kill you, but also because of the heart with the speech, where the man really believes that, hey, you're threatening my business, you're threatening my lifestyle, you're threatening not only the life of me, but also the life of my family. And because of that, if you continue to interfere, I'm going to have to kill you. I'm going to have to take you out. And even after that speech and after that proclamation, during the final fight scene, I guess you consider this issue number 3, not with the Marvel Kids Glove thing, but another problem I have with Marvel movies is the final fight was bad. Marvel has a bad problem with making final villain fight scenes, and I'm really getting tired of it, Marvel. And coming from Spider-Man 2, what happened, how amazing the final battle between Doc Ock and Spider-Man was in Spider-Man 2, and even it was a pretty good, you can say you dislike the Spider-Man 3 movie all you want, which it wasn't that good of a movie, but it wasn't a terrible movie, but it wasn't that good. But at the same time, though, the final tag fight with Spider-Man and the Hobgoblin versus the Sandman and Venom was okay. It was worthy of final fight material. And then Spider-Man fighting against Elektra was a pretty good fight too. And the Amazing Spider-Man, that was also a good fight. And for you to have this fight with Spider-Man versus the Vulture, it felt like for the Vulture making this big proclamation, this big speech, during the final fight with Spider-Man, he really didn't care about taking out Spider-Man. As a matter of fact, you could even say that the Vulture he beat Spider-Man in the final fight, and in the end, he was still, this man that you have holding up here ruined your freaking life. He he made it so that you had to leave the state. He destroyed your business, ruined your livelihood, possibly will make it so you can't see your daughter and your wife again. And you are going to let this man, you're not going to really go after this man. You're going to choose that barrel over there, that barrel stuff, that barrel of alien weaponry over there, instead of taking this guy out and ending this once and for all. I thought the Vulture would have went harder against Spider-Man when his biggest concern was just stealing. Despite his great speech, he just wanted to steal. And I believe that that comes from the Marvel Kids Glove syndrome, where they wanted the Vulture to be big and bad, and they wanted him to be intimidating, but they didn't want any serious consequences for his character. They wanted him to be bad, but they weren't willing to make him that bad. They didn't want to make him Green Goblin bad. And they didn't want to make him Green Goblin bad where these people took away his company from him, so he's going to get them. And he eventually went crazy. They didn't want to make him Doc Ock bad, where his experiment was his livelihood and he's lost his wife because of it, and he wants to do everything he can to complete his experiment and to prove that it works and that he isn't a failure. They didn't want to go to the Doc Ock limit. They didn't want to go that limit with him when it would have made a much better final fight and a much more stronger, solidified villain to know that he was willing to go that far with his family, when the decision they chose to make for the Vulture just caused him to come up short to me. And that's how that, despite the Spider-Man Homecoming being to me a great movie, and I would recommend you seeing it. You're a Spider-Man fan? Go see it. You're a Marvel fan? Go see it. You're a superhero movie fan? Go see it. But at the same time, though, there are certain things I wish Marvel would fix with their movies. And the Marvel Kids Club syndrome is one of them. I thought you guys had tried to redeem yourself with Captain America Civil War, but I still see that you still got a ways to go. Because despite despite the stuff Peter Parker did to Liz, and despite the Vulture really expressing he wants to get rid of Peter Parker for ruining his business and his life with his family, Peter Parker didn't face any serious consequences, and the Vulture wasn't willing to go all in so that you could make him a more redeemable character. And I still would have saw the man being redeemable, because I would understand the limits he was pushed to do what he did. Even if he honestly just wanted to just kill Spider-Man, I could still see his character as being redeemable. But instead, the decision with Peter Parker and Liz made things unrealistic, and the decision that was made concerning the Vulture weakened his character. So that's my opinion on my dislikes with Spider-Man Homecoming. They gotta get rid of the kids glove. You gotta take off the kids glove with this movie. You can be funny and you can be comedic, you can have some drama, but you gotta have some consequences for your characters. So what did you think of the Spider-Man Homecoming movie? Did you like the movie? Did you dislike the movie? Did you like it but think there were some rooms for improvement? Or did you dislike it and really think it needed a serious overhaul? Please leave your opinion down below. I definitely want to hear it, whether it's to the positive, what I have to say, or even if it's to the contrary. And again, thank you for taking the time to look at our video today, and please like and subscribe down below and show your support for Miss Reviews. And also, if you want to see more updates on our future projects of what we're doing, we also do hub page articles. We also make AMVs. We also are trying to make a video game. There's a lot of things in the works at Miss Reviews, and you want to support us and keep an update on what we're going on, please go to www.thefalcontower.weebly.com in order to see updates on future projects. And if you also want to take a look at my blog, also you can also comment there and tell me what you think about what's going on with me progressing with my projects, and I guess what's going on with my life too. So thank you for taking the time to look at our video today, and take care. Bye.